Morning and evening, maids heard the goblins cry.
Come by, orchard fruits, apples and quinces, lemons and oranges, plump cherries, raspberries, rolled down cheese peaches, wild freeborn cranberries, blackberries,
apricots, strawberries,
all ripe together in the summer weather. Thorns that grasp the hair, leaves that fly. Come back! Come by!
are grapes fresh from vine.
Pomegranates full of fine.
Rare pears and green gages.
Taste them. Sweet tongue
Evening by evening, among the brookside rushes, Laura bowed her head to hear.
Lizzie veiled her blushes, crouching close together in the cooling weather, with clasping arms and cautioning lips, with tingling cheeks and fingertips.
Lie close. We must not look at goblin men. We must not buy their fruits. Who knows upon what soil they fed their thirsty roots?
The goblins cried, hobbling down the glen.
Oh, Laura, Laura, you should not peep at goblin men. Lizzie covered up her eyes, covered close, lest they should look.
Laura reared her glossy head and whispered like the restless brook. Look, Lizzie, look, Lizzie. Down the glen tramp little men. One hauls a basket, one bears a plate, one lugs a golden dish of many pounds weight. Look how fair the vine must grow, whose grapes are so luscious. How warm the wind must blow through those fruit bushes.
No, their offer should not charm us, their evil gifts would harm us. She thrust a dimpled finger in each ear, shut eyes, and ran.
Curious Laura chose to linger, wondering at each merchant man.
One had a cat's face, one whisked a tail. One tramped at a rat's pace, one crawled like a snail. One, like a wombat, prowled obtuse and furry. One, like a rattle, tumbled hurry-scurry. She heard a voice like the voice of doves cooing all together. They sounded kind and full of loves in the pleasant weather. Backwards, up the mossy glen, turned and trooped the goblin men, with their shrill, repeated cry. When they reached where Laura was, they stood stock still upon the moss. One set his basket down, one reared his plate. One began to weave a crown of tendrils, leaves, and rough nuts brown. One heaved the golden weight of dish and fruit to offer her. Was still their cry.
Laura stared, but did not stir. Longed, but had no money.
The whisk-tailed merchant bade her taste in tones as smooth as honey. The cat-faced purred, the rat-faced spoke a word of welcome, and the snail-paced even was heard. One, parrot-voiced and jolly, cried,
Pretty goblin!
One whistled like a bird.
But sweet-toothed Laura spoke in haste. Good folk, I have no coin to take or to purloin. I have no copper in my purse, and all the gold is on the furs that shakes in windy weather above the rusty heather.
You have much gold upon your head. Buy from us with a golden curl.
She clipped a precious golden lock. She dropped a tear more rare than pearl, then sucked their fruit globes, bare or red, sweeter than honey from the rock, stronger than men rejoicing wine. Clearer than water flowed that juice. She never tasted such before. How should it cloy with length of use? She sucked and sucked and sucked the more fruit which that unknown orchard bore. She sucked until her lips were sore, then flung the emptied rinds away, but gathered up one kernel stone, and knew not was it night or day as she turned home alone.
Lizzie met her at the gate full of wise upbraidings. Dear, you should not stay so late. The twilight is not good for maidens. You should not loiter in the glen in the haunts of goblin men.
Nay, hush, my sister. I ate and ate my fill, yet my mouth waters still. Tomorrow night I will buy more. Have done with sorrow. I'll bring you plums tomorrow, fresh on their mother twigs, cherries worth getting. You cannot think what figs my teeth have met in, what melons icy cold on a dish of gold too huge for me to hold, what peaches with a velvet nap, pellucid grapes without one seed. Odorous indeed must be the mead wherein they grow, and pure their wave they drink with lilies at the brink, and sugar sweet their sap.
Golden head by golden head, like two pigeons in one nest folded in each other's wings, they lay down in their curtained bed.
Cheek to cheek and breast to breast, locked together in one nest.
Early in the morning, when the first cock crowed his warning, neat like bees, as sweet and busy, Laura rose with Lizzie, fetched in honey, milked the cows, aired and set to right the house.
Lizzie with an open heart,
Laura in an absent dream,
one content,
one sick in part,
one warbling for the mere day's bright delight,
one longing for the night.
At length slow evening came. They went with pitchers to the reedy brook, Lizzie most placid in her look, Laura most like a leaping flame. They drew the gurgling water from its deep. Lizzie plucked purple and rich golden flags.
The sunset flushes those furthest loftiest crags. Come, Laura, not another maiden lags, no wilful squirrel wags. The beasts and the birds are fast asleep.
But Laura loitered still among the rushes, and said the hour was early still, the dew not fallen, the wind not chill. Listening ever, but not catching the customary cry, come by, with its iterated jingle of sugar-baited words. Not for all her watching, once discerning even one goblin, racing, whisking, tumbling, hobbling, let alone the herds that used to tramp along the glen, in groups or single, of brisk fruit merchant men.
Oh, Laura, come, I hear the fruit call, but I dare not look. You should not loiter longer at this brook. Come with me home.
Laura turned, cold as stone, to find her sister heard that cry alone, that goblin cry, come buy our fruits, come buy. Must she then buy no more such dainty fruit? Must she no more such suck as past her fine, gone deaf and blind? Her tree of life dropped from the root. She said not one word in her heart's sore ache, but peering through the dimness, not discerning, trudged home, her pitcher dripping all the way. So crept to bed, and lay silent till Lizzie slept. Then sat up in a passionate yearning, and gnashed her teeth for balked desire, and wept as if her heart would break. Day after day, night after night, Laura kept watch in vain, in sullen silence of exceeding pain. She never caught again the goblin cry, come by, come by. She never spied the goblin men hawking their fruits along the glen.
But when the noon waxed bright, her hair grew thin and gray. She dwindled, as the fair full moon doth turn to swift decay and burn her fire away. One day, remembering her cornerstone, she set it by a wall that faced the south, dewed it with tears, hoped for a root, watched for a waxing shoot, but there came none. It never saw the sun. She no more swept the house, tended the fowls or cows, fetched honey, kneaded cakes of wheat, brought water from the brook, but sat down listless in the chimney nook and would not eat.
Tender Lizzie could not bear to watch her sister's cankerous care, yet not to share. She night and morning caught the goblin's cry.
Beside the brook, along the glen, she heard the tramp of goblin men, the yoke and stir poor Laura could not hear.
Lizzie longed to buy fruit to comfort her, but feared to pay too dear, till Laura, dwindling, seemed knocking at death's door. Then Lizzie weighed no more better and worse, but put a silver penny in her purse, kissed Laura, crossed the heath with clumps of furze at twilight, halted by the brook, and for the first time in her life began to listen and look.
Laughed every goblin when they spied her peeping. came towards her hobbling, flying, running, leaping, ruffing and blowing, chuckling, clapping, crowing, clucking and gobbling, mopping and mowing, full of airs and graces, pulling wry faces, demure grimaces, cat-like and rat-like, rattle and wombat-like, snail-paced in a hurry, paired-voiced and whistler, helter-skelter, hurry-scurry, chattering like magpies, fluttering like pigeons, gliding like fishes, hugged her and kissed her, squeezed her and caressed her, stretched up their dishes, panniers, and plates.
Good folk, give me much and money. She held out her apron, tossed them her penny.
Nay, take a seat. Our patrons of my feast must begin. Not yet heard. Warm to run. Wait for the start. Such fruits no man can carry. Half of them fly, half of them dry. Half of the hair will pass. Sit down, feast with us. Welcome guests. Choo-choo, rest with us.
Thank you, but one waits at home alone for me. So without further parleying, if you will not sell me any of your fruits, though much and many, give me back my silver penny I tossed in the fur for me.
They began to scratch their pates, no longer wagging, purring, but visibly demurring, grunting and snarling. One called her proud, cross-grained, uncivil. Their tones waxed loud, their looks were evil. Lashing their tails, they trod and hustled her, elbowed and jostled her, clawed with their nails, barking, mewing, hissing, mocking, tore her gown and soiled her stocking, twitched her hair out by the roots, stamped upon her tender feet, held her hands, and squeezed their fruits against her mouth to make her eat.
White and golden Lizzie stood like a lily in a flood, like a rock of blue-veined stone lashed by tides obstreperously, like a beacon left alone in a hoary, roaring sea.
Though the goblins cuffed and caught her, coaxed and fought her, bullied and besought her, scratched her, pinched her, black as ink, kicked and knocked her, mauled and mocked her,
Lizzie uttered not a word, would not open lip from lip lest they should cram a mouthful, but laughed in heart to feel the drip of juice that served all over her face and lodged in dimples of her chin and streaked her neck which quaked like curd.
At last, the evil people, worn out by her resistance, flung back her penny, kicked their fruit along whichever road they took, not leaving root or stone or sheet. Some writhed into the ground, some dived into the brook with ring and ripple, some scudded on the gale without a sound, some vanished in the distance.
In a smart ache tingle, Lizzie went her way. Knew not was it night or day. Sprang up the bank, tore through the firs. She ran and ran as if she feared some goblin man dogged her with jib or curse or something worse. But not when goblins scurried after, nor was she pricked by fear. The kind heart made her windy paced that urged her home, quite out of breath with haste and inward laughter. Laura, did you miss me? Come and kiss me. Never mind my bruises. Hug me, kiss me, suck my juices squeezed from goblin fruits for you, goblin pulp and goblin dew. Eat me, drink me, love me, Laura. Make much of me. For your sake, I have braved the glen and had to do with goblin merchant men.
Laura started from her chair, flung her arms up in the air, clutched her hair. Lizzie, have you tasted for my sake the fruit forbidden? Must your light like mine be hidden, your young life like mine be wasted? Undone in mine undoing and ruined in my ruin? Thirsty, cankered, goblin-ridden? She clung about her sister, kissed and kissed and kissed her. Tears once again refreshed her shrunken eyes, dropping like rain after long sultry drought. Shaking with anguish, fear, and pain, she kissed and kissed her with a hungry mouth. Her lips began to scorch, that juice was wormwood to her tongue. She loathed the feast. Writhing as one possessed, she leaped and sung, rent all her robe, and wrung her hands in lamentable haste and beat her breast. Swift fire spread through her veins, knocked at her heart, met the fire smoldering there, and overbore its lesser flame. She gorged on bitterness without a name.
She fell at last. Pleasure past and anguish past. Is it death or is it life? Life out of death.
That night long, Lizzie watched by her, counted her pulse's flagging stir, felt for her breath, held water to her lips, and cooled her face with tears and fanning leaves.
But when the first birds chirped about their eaves, and dew-wet grass bowed in the morning winds so brisk to pass, and new buds with new day opened of cup-like lilies on the stream,
Laura awoke as from a dream, laughed at the innocent old way, hugged Lizzie but not once or thrice. Her gleaming locks showed not one thread of gray. Her breath was as sweet as May, and light danced in her eyes.
For there is no friend like a sister in calm or stormy weather,
To cheer one on the tedious way, to fetch one if one goes astray, to lift one if one totters down, to strengthen and to stay. Goblin Market. Adapted from the poem by Christina Rossetti. Performed by Marilyn Blakewood, Liv Fassanella, Josh Goldberg, and, of course, the Goblins.